So last time we all sat together and did a radio show, it was Friday, and we spent the day on Friday debating Nick Sirianni, whether his seat was hot or whether he would be Eagles coach for the next few years. And then Sal Palantonio said something today about that very topic.
They're still behind Nick Sirianni, but I'll say it, Nick Sirianni's on the clock. Every head coach in the NFL is on the clock, but Nick Sirianni certainly is. Fourth year of a 5-year deal. You bring in an old hand, Vic Fangio. You bring in an experienced guy to run the offense, Kellen Moore. You got to let those guys do their job. But, I mentioned losing 2 of the core 4, Fletcher Cox and Jason Kelce. Still got Brandon Graham. Still got the man, Lane Johnson. But it's time for Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni to step into the leadership breach left by those 2 guys leaving, Cox and Kelce.
So they made a lot of changes this offseason. They signed a lot of players. They let some players go. They signed 2 big coordinators. But I think a lot of what it did was to sort of mitigate the damage that Nick Sirianni could do. It seems like they have put guardrails on him. And to me, this year is wholly focused on whether he can prove he knows what he's doing. This year, Nick Sirianni, everything, the success, the failure comes back on him. He has the most pressure on him in the entire Eagles organization.
Yeah, I've been hearing this, and I don't come to that conclusion. I really don't. And I'm not sitting here trying to convince anybody that Nick Sirianni is Andy Reid or some great offensive mind that the Eagles can't win without. I guess I'm reading the situation a little differently than everyone else. When you say they put guardrails up for him, almost a fail-proof situation, you brought him skilled guys, you got him 2 experienced coordinators, he should be able to succeed. I don't know how much of that was done for Nick Sirianni. I think more of that was done for Jalen Hurts. I really do. The more and more I look at the situation, This really boils down, and I heard Hugh and Joe talking on the way in here about whether or not he can get back to being a top 5 quarterback or what have you. Well, he's certainly entrenched in the top 10 to me right now. He's a top 10 quarterback. We can debate the 8 through 12 or 13 you want to debate. I like this flavor. You like that flavor. He ain't that much worse than those guys with an opportunity to be a top 5 quarterback. They've surrounded him from a skill position standpoint with the best weapons arguably in the league. This wasn't about Nick Sirianni. Nick Sirianni doesn't call plays. So they didn't set up the personnel so that Nick Sirianni can look good as the head coach calling plays. He's not even calling plays. He's not even calling the plays. So all Nick Sirianni needs to be able to do, quite frankly, is to manage that locker room, continue to cultivate a culture that breeds non-complacency, competition, a togetherness, a connectivity, these things they talk about. I think these are the things that they like about Nick Sirianni as the head coach. Jalen is the one on the field. He's the one on the field. He's the one who has to make all this work around him, along with Kellen Moore, right? Obviously, along with Kellen Moore. So would you agree with me, or maybe I should just ask, if the offense isn't playing well this year, that's Nick Sirianni's fault?
Well, I think everything is Nick Sirianni's fault.
Nah, that's not fair.
Here's why I think there's more pressure.
He's not getting credit. He's not getting credit for everything. If they have success, he's not going to get the credit.
Well, I think there are a number of different reasons that the offense might not look good. We could put that out there. Here's why I think there's more pressure on Sirianni is that there's obviously, you can see in the first round of the draft every year, all people want is a quarterback that they can say is their franchise quarterback, right? Every team is desperate for a franchise quarterback. Head coaches there are millions of them. We hadn't even heard about Nick Sirianni before we hired him. Doug Peterson, we hadn't even heard about before we hired him.
If you're an Eagles fan, you have.
Well, just as quarterback, but as a coach, right. We didn't hear him as a rumor, I guess, what we were saying.
Yep.
So there is an endless number of people that you can – hell, they have a guy who will be their offensive coordinator who, worst comes to worst, I think you will get some people, or at least he believes, that he could be a head coach somewhere someday. So the reason that there's more pressure on Sirianni and the reason that it will be that ultimately, whether it's his fault or not, he'll be the one to pay the price, is because it's a lot easier to replace Nick Sirianni than it is to replace Jalen Hurts. And I feel like, last thing, I feel like I've seen with my own eyes Jalen Hurts be great. I've seen it on the field.
Sure.
So I could always talk myself back into, especially when I'm paying him $50 million.
Was Nick Sirianni not great with him?
But see, I go back to that, and I always ask people, what was he great at doing? And nobody seems to have an answer for me.
Well, because I think you're looking for a tangible answer that's wrapped in, he called these plays, he designed that play, this and that and the other. All I'm saying is when Jalen was at his best, Nick Sirianni was a part of that, right? He was a part of that. So all I'm saying is this. I think the Eagles, and when you say you can find another quarterback or you can find another head coach, sure you can. But can you find the right head coach? Can you find the right head coach? And the Eagles went out and traded for a former first-round draft pick at quarterback this offseason. Guy who's, a couple years older than Jalen?
Yep.
So it's not like they haven't necessarily put a contingency plan in place somewhat. People can believe what they want to believe about Two Gloves Pickett being here and why he's here. There are a lot of people asking for Justin Fields this offseason. So there is some doubt as to whether or not Jalen can get back to playing at that level he played at 2 years ago. I believe in him. I think he can do it, but I think the pressure is on him to do it. What's the excuse? Last year it was supposedly the offense. The Eagles are telling you that it wasn't Nick Sirianni last year. That doesn't mean he's blameless. They're just saying to me he wasn't the majority of the reason why this thing ended up the way that it did. Whether it was Brian Johnson, whether it was Jalen Hurts, whether it's a combination of that or what have you, I don't know. Brian Johnson isn't here. They went out and got a new coordinator. You think they went out and got a new coordinator for Nick Sirianni or Jalen Hurts?
Well, I mean, on some level for both.
They got a new coordinator for Jalen Hurts.
215-592-9494. Who has more pressure on him this season, Nick Sirianni or Jalen Hurts? I say Nick Sirianni. Ike says Jalen Hurts. Jack, what do you say?
What pressure's on Nick? I mean, they kind of took the pressure off of
That's
Nick,
exactly
if
what
anything.
they did.
And they put the pressure way more on Jalen. Like, they went out and got Saquon Barkley. They paid a running back $13 million a year. Like, that's not to take pressure off of Jalen. If he's not a top five-ish quarterback again, I think there's a concern level.
Then what are they going to do? That's the reason there's more pressure on Nick. What are they going to do? If he's not a top five quarterback this year, what are they going to do? Dallas has been paying a guy who we know is not a top five quarterback money for years.
That's about to stop.
And well, now finally, but I just think quarterbacks get chance after chance after chance after chance, and head coaches do not. That's really where I end up.
No, listen. I think more often than not, you're right in that scenario. I would agree with you. I'm just saying, I believe they went out and added these weapons. Not only did they add weapons offensively, they added a former first-round draft pick as the backup quarterback. If that had been Justin Fields they added to this team, you know what this offseason would be like right now?
It'd be a dream. I know what we'd be talking about today.
Exactly. So only thing they did was didn't go out and get the shiny toy that everybody wanted, but they pretty much got the equivalent to that toy in a former first-round pick in Kenny Pickett.
And they tried to get Justin Fields.
The rumor was out there that they tried to get Justin Fields. So I'm only saying this to say, I'm not saying Jalen Hurts is under the gun, his job is in jeopardy or anything of that nature, but if this thing were to fall apart, it's going to fall apart offensively because the quarterback isn't playing at the level he should be playing at. It's not going to fall apart because Nick Sirianni isn't calling plays the way that he should. So unless Nick Sirianni is sabotaging his own job by being a menace in the building or on the sideline where he's creating an environment where everybody hates him down there, Nick Sirianni is pretty much – I mean, he's okay. He's the face. Like, all he has to do is go out there and say the right things and do the right things. Like, the guys on the field, Kellen Moore won't be here if this offense doesn't work. He won't be here after this year.
By the way, you say all he has to do is say the right things, and that's all he has to do. It's not exactly a guarantee from Nick.
well, that's true. I just think the on-the-field stuff,
Yep.
I think it's going to – we're just looking strictly at the offense, right? And that's what we're focusing on, strictly at the offense. I think it's more pressure on Jalen Hurts and Kellen Moore to get this done. Pretty much Jalen Hurts to play at a level he needs to play at, what they're paying him to do. They want him to get back to playing at that level. I just don't think Nick Sirianni, again, has much to do. If everybody's saying he's hands off and he doesn't have anything to do with the offensive play designs and everything else, Jack doesn't even want him in the meetings. Like, if everybody wants Nick Sirianni away, then I can't blame Nick Sirianni if the offense isn't producing. I got to look at Kellen Moore and I got to look at Jalen Hurts.